Now, data published by the Zimbabwean National Statistics Agency, ZimStat, on Monday shows that the year-on-year inflation rate for November 2023 as measured by the All Items Consumer Price Index had increased to 21.6%. The figure signifies a 3.8% increase on the yearly inflation rate of 17.8% recorded in the month of October 2023. The month-on-month inflation rate in November 2023 was 4.5%, gaining 2 percentage points on the October 2023 rate of 2.5%, with non-food inflation rate at 4.4%, gaining 1.9% on the October 2023 rate of 2.5%. Meanwhile, economists say current trends reflect the level of dollarization which the economy has gone through and highlighted the need to invest more in confidence building. Of course, our Prosper Chitambara, an economist, joins from Harare to unpack this latest development. Thank you so much for your time, Prosper.
Thank you for having me.
Now, how would you explain the significant rise in inflation that Zimbabwe experienced in November? And what are the main factors driving inflation in the country during that period?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's a worrisome trend, obviously, especially given the fact that we've seen a slowdown in terms of the increase of commodity prices on the global economy. But I think it's largely on account of the depreciation in the local currency that we have actually seen over the past few weeks. So obviously, when the Zimbabwe dollar depreciates, it actually increases the cost of importing products into Zimbabwe, and that has the effect of increasing prices. So my suspicion is that the depreciation of the local currency is largely responsible for the increase in inflation, both monthly and annual inflation that we've seen between October and November of this year, and of course between November of last year and November of this year on an annualized basis.
Now, how does this particular surge in inflation impact the overall economy of Zimbabwe?
Well, obviously, it reduces the disposable incomes. It creates, we've been battling chronic high inflation for a very long time. You would recall that before the change in the methodology, we actually had one of the highest inflation rates, annual inflation rates in the world. So we've changed the way we calculate our inflation. So that is actually seen a dramatic and significant decline in especially the annual inflation rate. But it creates a lot of uncertainties, especially when you consider the rate at which, say, the food poverty line has actually changed, both on an annual basis and on a monthly basis. Obviously, that reflects the extent of inflation, especially in Zim dollar terms. Well, for example, when you look at the food poverty line on a monthly basis, it actually increased by about 9%. Then when you look at that same food poverty line on an annualized basis, it actually increased by about 305%. So that could actually give you an indication in terms of the rate at which prices are actually changing in Zimbabwe dollar terms. Of course, our inflation numbers capture both the USD price developments and also the Zim dollar price development. But because we're largely dollarized, it actually means that the Zim dollar inflation is moderated rather by the relative stability in the USD inflation.
Now, what role does dollarization play in contributing to Zimbabwe's inflationary pressures?
I think it's both an advantage and a disadvantage. Number one, it's an advantage in the sense that currently about 90% of all transactions are being done in USD. So it means the weight of the USD in terms of the overall calculation of the blended inflation rate is very great. So that then moderates the overall blended inflation rate. But it's also a disadvantage in the sense that as long as we have two currencies, a weakening local currency and a relatively strong and stable US dollar, it actually means there will always be pressures on the local currency to depreciate. Why? Because every person that gets paid in Zim dollars has to convert that Zim dollar into US dollar. So that creates a lot of pressure in terms of the demand for the US dollar. And that then, because it's not matched by supply, it results in a depreciation in the local currency, which also exerts inflationary pressures in the economy.
Now, let's talk about the potential benefits or drawbacks associated with dollarization in relation to this issue of inflation. Of course, what are the benefits and, of course, drawbacks?
The main benefit is that it helps to moderate the instability. It helps to ensure some degrees of stability, because most transactions, like I said, are now being done in the USD, which is relatively more stable than the local currency. But it's also a disadvantage in the sense that as long as we have a weak currency on the one end and a strong currency on the other end, means the demand for the strong currency will remain high. And it's that same high demand for the USD, which also then affects the value of the local currency. Because economic agents have, to all intents and purposes, ditched or rejected rather the local currency. They prefer to transact in the USD. They also prefer to hold their incomes and their savings rather in USD. So it actually means that the demand for the USD continues actually to increase as long as the USD continues to circulate alongside a weak Zimbabwe dollar.
All right, Prosper, before I let you go, how does the reliance on foreign currency affect the government's ability to control inflation in the country?
Well, I think we've seen, I think I would say our biggest challenge has been the increase in money supply, Zim dollar money supply. And because of that increase in Zim dollar money supply, the government is still paying its civil servants a significant proportion of their salaries in Zim dollars. Government is also paying contractors who are doing government projects, whether they're infrastructure projects, and even farmers, they're still being paid in the local currency. And then what then happens is that once the economic agents actually get paid in the local currency, they have to either go to the formal market or the informal market to change that Zim dollar income into USD. So that creates again another avenue of pressure for the further depreciation of the local currency. So the usage of the USD alongside a weak local currency, in my view, will continue to result in a depreciation of the local currency. So it's something like a vicious cycle. Any increase in local currency or Zim dollar money supply,
all right,
is actually then translates into a loss of value of that same local currency as it increases the demand for the USD.
Prosper Chitambara, thank you so much for your time. Economist from Harare. Once again, thank you.
Thanks for having me.